Aloha and welcome to Stan the Energy Man, and welcome to my lunch hour. Stan Osterman here from the Hawaii Center for Advanced Transportation Technologies under HTDC and DBED in Honolulu, Hawaii. And we're here today to talk to some visitors from the mainland who are coming here to look at what Hawaii's doing in energy. So we have a great guest today, and I always try and squeeze them in when I can get them here on a trip. But we have Charles Hanley, Mr. Charles Hanley from Sandia National Labs, and he's out here looking at some of the projects being done at Young Brothers and talking to a bunch of the energy folks out here to get a feel for what Hawaii's doing in energy. So Charles, good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate you spending some time with me. And I know you've got a tight schedule, so I really do appreciate spending some time with me. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did to get into energy, what drove you into energy, what drives your passion for energy, and how you ended up at Sandia Labs and the kind of work that you do there.
Sure. I have a master's degree in electrical engineering and came to Sandia out of school. So I was really lucky to get an opportunity to come there and work at a national laboratory that has so many different things going on. Sandia is the largest of the Department of Energy laboratories, and when I interviewed, frankly, it was clear that there are so many different career paths one could take. Mm-hmm. I was studying control systems and really enjoyed the intensive interplay between math, modeling and simulation, and then putting it to use in dynamic systems so that you could change behavior of mechanical and electrical systems. So when I came out to Sandia, I did that for several years, working on security platforms and controlled stabilization for different moving platforms and things of that sort. But I was always intrigued by what Sandia had going on in the energy world, and it's quite a large program area within Sandia Labs. So over time, I explored further what might be opportunities in that space. And about 6 years into my career, which was a little over 20 years ago, I switched over into our renewable energy programs and took some of my engineering skills combined with project and program management and spent a few years managing our international programs.
Oh, okay.
So during that time, it was largely in Latin America, and there were programs where we had dual purpose activities. We were looking at developing markets in Latin America for US manufactured product, photovoltaic modules and photovoltaic systems, and also helping to do rural development in those countries. It's interesting to think back to that time when that was the market, rural applications, and we had to find and build those markets compared to today's world. Additionally, it's interesting to think that it was a time when there was US product to push as well. So, you know, the world has changed dramatically since then.
Well, the National Labs have a pretty important role in terms of starting businesses and perpetuating businesses and finding markets for businesses. And could you just tell everybody a little bit about how Department of Energy and the National Labs work together to do those missions? Because a lot of people think that they're great research places, but why do they do the research? And a lot of it is directly tied to business development.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. The Department of Energy has 17 national laboratories in its system, and they have different functions, and in fact, they cater or they specialize in capabilities associated with different parts of the Department of Energy. Within that, the main purpose is research and technology development to address issues, a broad spectrum of issues related to national security. And in doing that, technology development, for much of that work, much of it is fundamental science, fundamental engineering, but a lot of it is applied and done in partnership with universities and industry with a real objective of developing products that can be transitioned out to commercial sector and that can be transitioned to industry. In the case of energy, for those energy security needs that we have within the country. So there's a very well-developed machinery around technology transfer, around partnerships, research partnerships with outside organizations, and even workforce development and working on those long-term collaborative relationships that can make, hopefully, the work and the products that come out of the national laboratories relevant to our everyday world.
Great. The organization I belong to, Business and Economic Development, and HTDC, High Tech Development Corporation, their whole thing is, you know, getting entrepreneurs into the production manufacturing mode and taking their products to market in the high tech sector. And we've defined high tech not just to be computers, but also to be, you know, anything where we're taking technologies and interfacing to different technologies or using them in a different, unique way. But how do our companies that we're trying to grow here, how can they take advantage of the laboratories, the national laboratories? What are some of the tools or the mechanisms, like the SBIR system, or you know, what ways do they get into to be able to use the facilities there, or use the expertise of the folks that work there to their benefit, to grow their company and develop their companies?
So there are probably a number of ways to make that work, some of which are rather formal and others which are somewhat informal. SBIR, Small Business Innovation and Research Program, is a way for smaller companies to access Department of Energy funds that meet different programmatic objectives. Mm-hmm. Some of getting involved in SBIR projects would probably involve looking closely and watching the calls on the Department of Energy webpage. The role of the labs in SBIR is often twofold. In that case, we often help the DOE by reviewing proposals and provide technical input towards weighting what can be good ones to move forward with as initial projects, or even as they go through different phases towards commercialization. But the other thing is that we can work with companies to help them develop their proposals and partner with them on using our capabilities, national laboratory test facilities or research capabilities to help them strengthen what they're doing even as they're developing proposals. So that's one example. Others, as I said, are cooperative research and development agreements where companies think that they are developing IP and want to protect that. They can still work with the labs in a way that their IP is protected, okay, or that mutually generated IP is shared appropriately. Those kinds of agreements can involve transfer of funds to the labs. They can be funds in where a company is paying us, or where we're mutually working towards an objective and utilizing capabilities from both companies.
In that model, would you also get like more mature companies like Boeing, or you know, some of the bigger companies that would come in and say, hey, we want to fund something and we want to work with you, can you help us? Do you get that very often?
Yes, but it spans the spectrum. We do get that. It's not the mainstay of our business, especially in the energy world. We have a CRADA, Cooperative Research and Development Agreement portfolio that's respectable, but it's not our bread and butter, certainly. Okay. The other thing is that companies like Boeing, or small companies, any company that wants to, can do basically what's usually called a work for others arrangement, where there's not IP issues involved. They just know we have an expertise that they want to access and they can pay us to do it. Beyond that, a lot of our work, and I say this quite frequently, a lot of our work is founded in solid partnerships, so that we recognize that we're meeting the needs of today and tomorrow within our industry and within our energy world. So a lot of those partnerships are formal in a sense, but they arise through collaboration in conferences, collaboration on different problems, sharing of information and data, things of that sort that develop into broader technology development type projects.
Does any part of the National Labs system actually help a new company not only develop their technology, but move them to the next levels in manufacturing or marketing, or does that belong in somebody else's line in DOE or Department of Commerce or someplace else?
No, I think that there are programs within DOE and activities and offices within the laboratories that help certainly advanced manufacturing. In many cases, the laboratories have manufacturing programs or highly advanced manufacturing capabilities that come out of defense programs and others that can be ported over to industry. In terms of marketing and, let's say, incubators or things of that sort, we have some things. There's currently a program underway that comes out of Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy that's called the Small Business Voucher Program. And essentially, small businesses can provide proposals to access people or capabilities at the labs and help them bring their products to commercial readiness, or identify better what the market is for the kind of technology they're developing. Having said all that, I won't claim that we're the best at that kind of front end.
That's not your core, that's not one of your core competencies.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what would you say, you know, your experience when you were early in your career, when you're down in South America, what did that kind of experience do to help you in your job today? I mean, what kind of things did you learn in that part of your career that really kind of helps with what you do today in the grid sector and doing what you do at Sandia?
I can answer that from a number of perspectives, frankly. There's the cultural aspect of really fundamentally recognizing the role of energy in enabling everything we do as a human society, and really coming to internalize and see how there are cultural aspects that have to be taken into account as we work to make people's lives better via easier access to energy or clean energy or equitable access. So there was all of that because we were bringing energy to indigenous and underserved communities, as well as communities or businesses that already had it and wanted to go clean. There's the cultural side of it. On the technology side, I just gained a tremendous appreciation for what the potential of clean energy technologies is, and the opportunity for new technologies and the opportunity for us to use real demonstrations to move the ball further down the field. And then finally, I'd say, on a personal level, I really learned that the value of a high-performing team and surrounding myself with people who are tremendously intelligent and listening to their guidance and using that to drive decisions, it was a tremendous growth period for me that I still employ in how I do things now.
Yeah, I learned a long time ago, you surround yourself with smart people and it makes you look a little smarter yourself. So I'll second that one. I'll try and get all the smart people around me that I can for everything.
That's right. That's what I try to do.
Well, we're coming up on our first break, so we're going to take a quick short break and be back with you in about a minute. Be back to talk to Charles.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen, host of Likeable Science on Think Tech Hawaii. Come join us every Friday at 2 p.m. when I interview interesting scientists about what they do, why they do it, and why we should all care about it. It's a lot of fun to see. And you can learn interesting stuff. You'll hear all kinds of fascinating science, and we know you'll have a great time. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.
Aloha, namaskar, and hello. I am Anu Hittel, and I host a show on climate change. It's called Climate Change Beyond Outrage, and in it, we go beyond outrage to look at solutions to global climate problems facing people, nations, and the world. Join me every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Hawaii Standard Time. Aloha, namaskar, and goodbye.
Hey, welcome back to my lunch hour. Stan, Energy Man here, talking to Charles Hanley from Sandia National Labs back in New Mexico. Charles, what's Sandia specializes in? I know you do microgrids and work with the military, but what are some of the other things that Sandia works on in general?
You mean across the laboratory?
Right.
Well, we're a laboratory of about 12,000 people, and we have facilities. 90% of those people are located in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and about 1,000 or so are located in Livermore, California.
Okay.
We actually have a site on Kauai, so we have a permanent presence in Hawaii as well. It's only a few people. Sandia grew out of defense programs. We were a part of the Manhattan Project.
Okay.
And so what we did and what we still do is the engineering of systems. Back then we were engineering weapons systems, and we've expanded from that to engineering of systems with a strong science and technology foundation in areas of national security.
Okay.
So I'll move then from weapons to defense systems to energy and climate.
Mm-hmm.
And all of it is interrelated. It's all related to utilizing capabilities around engineering sciences, fundamental materials, nanotechnologies and microsystems, advanced computing and analytics, and deploying it to, I'll go back to the energy world now, employing it in areas of advanced fossil fuels, advanced nuclear energy, advanced clean and renewable energy, grid modernization, energy or climate science as it's applied to advanced monitoring and modeling and prediction of client movement, as well as transportation energy and various facets of looking at advanced fuels, advanced combustion, storage, and the link between transportation and the grid.
Great.
So quite a wide variety. I have to say this, we take pride in the breadth and depth of our technology applications.
So obviously you have a passion for working at Sandia. How would you, what advice would you give to high school kids that are getting ready to go off to college and have the same kind of passion for energy and things like that? If they wanted to get a job at Sandia right now, what would you tell them to prepare to do in college, you know, in terms of grades, study habits, and then as they get closer to graduation, you know, what's the path? How do you prepare to go into a civil service or a job in Sandia Labs?
I've participated on panels where we address this kind of a question. Some of the things that I say are definitely study hard, get grounded in the fundamentals, follow your passion if you want to go in this direction, and get grounded in the fundamentals of science or engineering. If you want to be a physicist, great. If you want to be a chemist or a chemical engineer, wonderful. I followed mathematics and electrical engineering, great. That's all great. Get founded in the fundamentals and know and really develop what you're good at. Additionally, pay attention to what's going on in the world. It really helps because the world of energy is very highly interconnected. You've got to be willing to not only look at technology issues, and in fact, you don't have to be a technologist, right? You can be a social scientist, you can be a lawyer, you can be so many other things addressing energy issues because it's so interconnected to how we run our lives. So work hard, find your passion. If you want to come and work at Sandia or the national laboratories, we all have student internship programs that actually pay pretty well.
Good.
And it is an excellent way to learn, to test the ropes for both sides, to learn if you like the environment of a national laboratory and to see if it works for you. So I highly encourage people to really apply to those programs.
Would you, I don't know how to phrase this properly, would you say that it's an advantage to go to, say, an Ivy League school or an MIT? I mean, does that give you really a big leg up on everybody else, or could you be a public college graduate, University of Hawaii graduate in engineering, electrical engineering, and stand a chance at getting a job at a national lab?
There is unquestionably opportunity for anybody from any school.
Great.
To be working at Sandia Labs, to be working at a different national laboratory, or to be working in a number of other places where you can be making a significant impact and having a really rewarding career. So as the father of two girls, I think about questions like that. They aren't college age yet, but no, I think the opportunities exist for people that apply themselves regardless of where they're coming from.
Great, because I know one of the big things that we all fret when our kids get old enough to go to college is, how am I going to afford this? And we want our kids to have good jobs afterwards, and the tendency is to try and send them to the best and the most expensive school. And sometimes that puts people financially in a pretty big bind, individually having student loans or as parents trying to give your kids the best shot. But there's a lot of great jobs out there that if you do really well, no matter where you go to school, and you take, like you say, the passion and really apply it, you can get ahead and have a great career in a great place.
So I strongly agree. I will even contend that if the college degree is not what somebody is about, they can still make things happen, etc. But I am a strong proponent of the college degree.
Yeah.
I think it does a really great job of preparing people for the workforce, and it gives them more options to springboard from. So even at a place like Sandia or a technology-oriented organization, an advanced degree helps.
Okay.
You can do well without it, but it really helps.
Okay. Well, let's shift gears a little bit now into grids, because that's your specialty. That's where you live and breathe in Sandia, and that's where our passion is here right now. Hawaii has some pretty aggressive clean energy goals as far as a grid, and we'd like to also mimic that in transportation. So could you give us a kind of the state of the union or state of the world in terms of some of the things that are happening that are cutting edge on integrating grid and transportation and microgrids and smart grids and islanding power, and kind of give us your best picture of where we're really headed as a nation with our utility systems and our power systems to move ahead into clean energy?
I can try, but that is such a wide open question. Because working in the electric sector and really modernizing our energy infrastructure is such a complex problem. or set of problems. In fact, I was trying to think, what's my one simple statement? I think that's that it's very complex.
Okay, that's not helping much, but okay.
So I think the status is at this point that we are really in a very dynamic situation in terms of our grids, and Hawaii is such a great example. If I take a step back, I think it was 2008, the Department of Energy commissioned a group of national labs to do some studies on grid modernization and sort of develop a strategic plan. We came up with a framework of doing 15 different studies and wrote 15 different reports at that time for the future of the grid. And the way I categorized it back then was that we were very much in the define the problem stage. In the sense of a few things. More and more renewable energy coming online, wind and photovoltaics causing variability of the system. Additionally, increased and enhanced flow of information through the grid, through smart meters, through other things, through advanced technologies that go to substations and switching and protection. And that information flow adds to people's decision-making capabilities, but it also adds to the amount of data available for decisions, and it also makes things vulnerable to cyber security incidents. And beyond that, also changing climate is impacting, and we're trying to figure out what the impact of changing climate is as we get more storms, as sea levels are rising, et cetera. So back then, it was define the problem. And there still is a lot of defining the problem going on, but my categorization now is that we really have defined the problem. We've done a lot of work on that, so now we have to come up with the solutions. Hawaii, again, has, even though you have these aggressive targets for renewable energy integration, you are already very far along. So the information and the experience of Hawaii is one that the mainland can really learn from now in terms of how to keep the grid stable and how to continue to integrate more and more renewables at higher costs as we go to more and more. How do we deal with storage and utilize storage, which is very expensive, but it helps to smooth out that variability that wind and solar energy provide. So there are examples of forward-looking projects in both the research and demonstration arena throughout the country. There's a community that's working together in many ways to look at these kinds of things, but I don't really have the nutshell answer that says, you know, this is the state of the art and what we should be doing.
Okay. I know that, you know, I'm really proud of what Hawaii and U.S. do in terms of technology, but do we look to Europe or Asia or any other, I mean, as a national lab, do you folks look externally for some of the technologies there and try and see if they apply to Hawaii or the U.S.?
Yes, we do, and that's a great question. Of course, it's a big world and there's a lot to do. You asked about integrating the grid and transportation, because that's something that we're working on these days, is the interdependencies of a variety of infrastructures. And there are projects underway in Europe where they're doing that kind of work with electric vehicles, with fuel cell vehicles, and utilizing grid services and the vehicle integration to look at how to smooth out actually how to make more efficient the integration of those infrastructures. Asia, similarly, Japan, China, Korea are doing projects where they're, again, looking at these integrations, and they're also looking at microgrids, as you mentioned, and coming up with different implementations. I think that right now is a time where there are a wide number of different implementations of technologies to achieve sort of the same goals of stability, resilience, which is a topic I'd like to address, and clean energy. And we're still gathering the data and trying to figure out what are going to be the winners.
Well, let's talk a little bit about resilience. As a former guard guy, I'm all about recovering from hurricanes and natural disasters as a state, you know, second responder, I'll call it, not a first responder. The police and fire are there first, and then it's call out the National Guard. And, you know, when a disaster is bad enough, you know, we start to look at, hey, if we're resilient, that helps us recover faster. So what are things that we look at in the grid to accomplish resilience?
It's a really interesting field right now. I talked about the impacts of climate change. You're talking about hurricanes and recovery. So I'll talk from our own perspective. We've got some work going on after Superstorm Sandy on the east coast of the U.S., where in the rebuilding process, people are trying to say, what can we do to be more resilient to these kinds of storms in the future? And we and others have teamed up on designing advanced microgrids that are more adaptable, and basically these advanced microgrids allow greater infrastructure or smarter, I shouldn't say smarter, all these people working on this are very smart, but infrastructure investments that allow focusing on adaptability of the system in the event of a significant event. And so we're looking at resiliency in that regard. We are doing projects where we're looking at geomagnetic disturbances, basically the effect of solar flares, and what kind of long-term impact that can have on equipment and how to design a more resilient system. We're looking at cyber and physical events and how systems can be more resilient. And the most important, not the most important, but a very important aspect of that is being able to assess different options in some kind of quantitative manner. So we're developing probabilistic metrics, basically ways to measure different approaches to infrastructure planning, research, policy, operational differences, fuel use and spare parts, and looking at these in terms of probabilities of minimizing consequences, very intensive stakeholder process, and then looking at relative decisions and seeing where we can enhance the resiliency of systems.
So would it be fair to say that in a microgrid, or one of the advantages of a microgrid concept is that it's a smaller package, so therefore a little bit easier to manage rather than a huge grid?
Yeah.
You can design it more properly to be resistant to cyber attack and things like that. It could maybe isolate itself faster. What are some of the other advantages that are specific for microgrids that help you accomplish that resilience?
In addition, they utilize local resources, which could be locally stored resources like hydrogen, but it can also be solar or local wind. So a microgrid can be more efficient in that regard. They can also be basically broken out. They can focus on critical loads, your first responder kind of loads, fire, police, gas stations in some cases. So you can design a microgrid to focus on those critical loads, and in many cases come back online or stay online and be more hardened. So all of the things that you said apply. They can just be a microgrid, or a series of microgrids can be interconnected, and as such sort of form a web that's more secure, more fungible, but yet more secure.
Great. Well, we're going to take a quick break here, but that's where we're going to come back to, because I'm building a microgrid at Hickam, several microgrids at Hickam that are interconnected, and we'll start comparing notes on microgrids. We're going to take a quick break now. I'll be back in about 60 seconds.
Okay, this is Think Tech Hawaii, and it's Wednesday. Every Wednesday is Energy Wednesday here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. 4 to 5 p.m. every Wednesday. Come and listen to us. And just to show you what I mean, I'm going to ask Sharon to tell us more.
Come and see us every Wednesday, as Jay said. And we have people like Jim Albers from HECO here, and co-host Ray Starling here every Wednesday. We not only go on Olelo and OC16, but also stream live. So please come visit us, hear about the latest in clean energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here. You got any comment on all this?
As important as energy is in all of our lives today, this is a great forum and a great format to vet those issues. So I encourage everybody to listen in and participate.
Okay, Ray, what do you think for a close?
Well, I think this is the greatest show in the energy world here in Hawaii. You can come here every week, 1 hour, and catch the latest on what's happening and hear from the people who really know what's going on, like Jim Alberts. We appreciate your coming today.
Thank you.
Ray Starling, Sharon Moriwaki, Jim Alberts, and Jay Fidel here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. 4 to 5
Aloha.
p.m. Wednesday. Aloha.
Aloha.
Hey, welcome back to my lunch hour. We're here with Charles Hanley from Sandia National Labs, talking about grids, microgrids, all kind of grid stuff. And you know, when we we left before the break, we were talking about some of the advantages of microgrids. When I started trying to sell the concept of microgrids to the Air Force, I put it in terms of energy security, kind of like resilience. But in a military context, I explain it to them this way. You have a base, and there's a guy next to your base on a hill with a mortar. and he wants to damage as much of your grid as he can. Now, if you have a fairly structured grid with like a single power station or power, production plant, he has 10 rounds and 30 seconds to put as much as he can right there. And if he's lucky, he takes your grid out. But he only has 30 seconds, because after that, he's a target. But if you have 5 microgrids, and they all have separate power, and maybe even disperse the supply of energy that goes to the power, like hydrogen or batteries, and spread it out, now he has 20 or 30 targets. And oh, by the way, you can make decoys so that he doesn't know which ones are the real generators and things like that. Now he has 10 rounds and 30 seconds before he's a target. He can't do as much damage to your base. So when I approach the military about microgrids, that's my selling point to them, that they need to make their bases resilient because they can't be targeted easily. Their critical assets are protected just by dispersing them, and that's the microgrid protection the military sees. But the control piece is also important. To have a commander of an installation be able to take that power, like you say, and move it to a critical place. I need it at the hospital now. I don't need it at the simulator. I need the power at the where I store my food for refrigeration, not in the barracks where the guys are sleeping. To be able to move that power around when it's limited, when you don't have enough of it, that's also really critical. So there's a lot of parallels there. And everything you said, we've been in meetings all week, everything you said about microgrids just makes me feel better and better about what we're doing at Hickam, because I think it's the answer for the military.
I agree with you. I think that's wonderful. Let's extend your scenario here. Whether it's in an expeditionary or an operational sense, the microgrid can be a single warfighter, and all of the different systems that this person is carrying, the energy systems and the storage and batteries and such, extended up to an expeditionary force or a forward operating base or a permanent base. In all of these cases, those kinds of threats are real and need to be addressed, especially to critical assets and mission critical loads and assets, and making sure that the microgrid is available and adaptable to be able to adapt and modernize or reshape itself in the face of those kinds of circumstances is really important. So I admire what you're doing there, and I think we can learn a lot together on that.
Yeah, because when we do stuff in the military, we have to assume that we're going to lose things. We're going to have somebody attack something and take out a piece. How do we adjust? How do we move? Because we still have a mission to do. We keep on going until we can't do anything else. But until then, we have to keep adjusting and adapting and adjusting and adapting and keep moving forward. So the whole concept of a microgrid just seems to fit really nicely with what we're doing at Hickam and Pearl Harbor for the military. But we see those same applications maybe helping Hawaiian Electric move forward in their grids too. What are some of the ways that you found as a military person, a military-related grid person and working microgrids, that you see us helping Hawaiian Electric maybe translate some of what we learned at Hickam and Pearl Harbor and we learned from Sandia that can help Hawaiian Electric with their absorption of all the renewables that are coming on board?
Well, one thing I'll say is that in our learnings on Hawaiian Electric, it's very clear that they're very advanced and very technically advanced in terms of how they can address these issues of tremendous penetration of renewables and threats from changing weather and such. So I think that the learning process will take place with their leadership as well. Hawaiian Electric has different sets of scenarios on different islands, of course.
Sure.
And there are different characteristics where load exists and where the renewable resources exist. So I think what Hawaii offers is an opportunity to try several different things, including Hickam and defense-related projects. But to look at the integration of, there's so much distributed energy production here, so much distributed solar going on rooftops and things of that sort, as well as centralized wind and projects of that sort. We can look at advanced storage integration, be it batteries, advanced flow batteries, advanced hydrogen generation and hydrogen use through fuel cells, and coming up with some multiple streams of identifying and developing these adaptable and value-added microgrids.
I know one of the challenges we face as a state is that most of our folks live on this island of Oahu in Honolulu, but a lot of our renewable assets would be on the neighbor islands. And as a culture, you talked about going to South America and learning from that culture. One of the things we were considering a while ago was running a big cable from Maui to Oahu and putting all the wind farms on Maui and Molokai and Lanai and sending all the power to Oahu. And that went over like a lead balloon because everybody's going, hey, why am I putting windmills all over my island to give you guys on Oahu power? But the reality is there's only so much PV and that we can put on this island. So what are when we talk about transportability of energy, can you kind of maybe address how hydrogen coming off of geothermal on the Big Island could be transported? Maybe that's a solution, or are there other solutions that we could look at as a state where we can bring and share and transport the energy that we have on other islands to Oahu without running a cable or without, spending millions and millions and millions in infrastructure?
Yeah, there might be, so you have to do something, right? There might be something there in hydrogen. There is this separation between resource and load. So one of the reasons that I'm here in Hawaii on this trip is that a few of us are just talking to people like yourself and others about the possibility of a demonstration, a regional demonstration project that can be employed here in Hawaii, where we're looking at the use of hydrogen to link and economize and make more efficient the linkages between transportation and stationary power. So what if we used the geothermal energy on the Big Island or some of the wind energy on Maui to generate hydrogen through electrolysis? And there's a lot of research to be done there to improve the costs of electrolysis and make it better and reduce the amount of precious metals that are required for electrolyzers. But we use that to generate hydrogen, and we can compress it and store it, and it's actually quite safe to do so, and then it's transportable in ways that don't upset the fragile ecosystems between the islands. There are already ships running between the islands.
Sure, barges and ships, sure.
Correct.
Outstanding.
So it's a really interesting proposition. Again, it's not just for power for your home. It can be for lighting, it can be for heating, cooking, it can be for transportation, moving your vehicles around. Hydrogen, more than a fuel, is an energy carrier. And it can be used in so many different fashions that you get so much utility out of it. So if you're creating hydrogen, you've got options with that.
Well, you mentioned the safety aspect of hydrogen, and I'll tell you right now that as a guy who, I want to say, lives and breathes hydrogen, and I know it's not poisonous, but can't breathe it too much. Hydrogen is one of those things that when you go to the public and you talk to them, there's almost a knee-jerk that all they think of is hydrogen bomb or Hindenburg. There's an instant reflex saying it's not safe. It's going to blow up. It's explosive. Help me out there. What kind of, people come from the mainland here and they speak with authority. I come from here and it's like, they don't want to listen to me. Tell us a little bit about hydrogen safety and why you think it's safe.
I think that there's a lot we have to do to change perceptions around that and listen to people and get a feel for why people are scared about the impacts or the safety concerns of hydrogen. But we have a combustion research facility at Sandia that is it's world class. And that's in our California site where we have 1,000 people working on a bunch of different things related to combustion and fuels. And we have a depth of knowledge and expertise related to the storage of hydrogen, the interaction of hydrogen under pressure with different metals. What does hydrogen combustion mean? What happens when it combusts? As a simple example, hydrogen's lighter than air, right?
Yep.
So if there's a release from a hydrogen tank, where does it go?
Straight up.
Up. Yeah, so there are many facets of hydrogen that actually make it far safer than people think.
No carbon in it, so it doesn't radiate heat.
No carbon, that's right.
Yeah. So that's still my challenge is the more people I talk to, I'm automatically confronted with the folks that are worried about explosions and things like that.
I've been hearing stories about this in Hawaii. I've heard stories like that in California. There definitely needs to be some sort of a public education campaign around this, but I think we can get past that.
I'm working on it because even, the gasoline and diesels that we use now, particularly gasoline, most of the firefighters, when we train them on hydrogen safety and as responding to hydrogen incidents, by the time they finish the training, they're like, what's the problem? This is a non-event as far as, we don't even have to clean anything up. There's nothing to hose down, because like you say, it goes up at 45 miles an hour, and it turns into a cloud eventually. You know, they don't worry about it, but
Yeah.
when they come into the class, it's really kind of an eye-opener. One of the things that Paul Pontio on the Big Island at Blue Planet does in his tour is he has a little walk burner, and he'll turn the hydrogen on full blast, and he'll stand there with a lighter. And you see everybody moving away from him. The longer he talks, because this thing is, you can hear it coming out of there. And then he'll take the lighter and he'll put it right about 2 feet above it and hit the thing, and the flame comes out. And you see the flame dancing in the hydrogen, moving around, but it won't ignite it because it's going so fast past it doesn't have a chance to mix with enough oxygen to burn. So then he stops and he turns the pressure down on the burner till there's this little coming out, and there's enough to mix, and he lights it, and there's a little flame, like a propane flame.
Yeah.
A little bit clearer, but it's there. And then he'll take and put his hand right next to the flame. I mean, 1/4 of an inch from the flame, and leave it there. And I've done that too, and it doesn't get hot. There's some really neat things about hydrogen as a cooking fuel that people would be amazed if they saw it. I just got to get more of that word out.
Yeah.
But it's really, I found it to be very safe. I mean, whenever you're storing energy, whether it's batteries or even moving a heavy object uphill, I mean, there's always safety issues.
Yeah.
You have a bunch of water at the top of a hill and plan to run it through a turbine. That's great energy, but that's a lot of water uphill, and you could cause a big flood too.
Yeah.
No matter what energy source it is, when you concentrate it, you got to treat it with respect and understand the safety issues. But you know,
Agreed.
the last minute or so here, why don't you tell us what your perception is of Hawaii and where we're going, and how we can work with Sandia to get better and help improve energy around the world.
Well, there's a group of a few of us who've come here for most of this week to explore possibilities and collaborative opportunities for this idea of linking hydrogen, or using hydrogen as an energy carrier to link different energy needs. Hawaii presents such opportunity for a number of reasons. The need, the cost of energy, the availability of renewable resources, but far more than that is the people and the institutions that are ready and willing to address the hard questions. So it's just been such a tremendous interaction and such a learning experience because of the experts that are here and the people that represent different facets of the problem, who are all lined up and recognize that we need to work towards solutions. So we're very, very eager to define something and work with the Department of Energy to see what we can do.
Well, I'll go out on a limb and say I represent all of the folks that are stakeholders here in Hawaii, and say we're looking forward to seeing more of you out here, working with Sandia Labs and Department of Energy, and taking you up on your offer to showcase what we can do out here to get the nation farther along in renewable energy.
That'll be wonderful. Again, thanks for having me.
No, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it, Charlie. And that's it for this week. Stan the Energy Man will see you back next week, Friday. I might have Rachel doing the show next Friday. I got to check. I think I'm traveling. But anyway, we'll be back. Aloha.